everyone, this is Dr. Liz, and you're listening to Include with Dr. Liz. This show is about everyone, all people, including you. It's about people and their diverse lived experience in this world. I chat with guests to get to know them, their identities, and their inclusion needs, so we all have an opportunity to understand how best to include them, so together we can create a world where everyone thrives. Dr. Amber is a hardworking, honest, strong-headed, dancing every day assistant professor of medicine. Identifying as an ethnic, racial, cultural, linguistic, and religious minority, Amber describes herself as a weird mix of cold and deep, and is passionate about physician well-being. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. Now, I want to know a bit more about this self-described weird mix of cold and deep. What did you mean when you described yourself that way?
I was seen as almost all of my life as cold and distant. You know, like somebody who's a loner, somebody who wants to be by themselves. And I still am, honestly. But what I have discovered over time is that I also crave human connection, like quite a bit. And it's not just, that I crave it. I actually have it many a time. And so when I look back, I think the most interesting moments of my life are the ones where I did connect deeply with someone. And interestingly, I connected deeply with people at work more than I did at home. People who I, in any capacity, mentored or was a senior to, I really enjoyed having a relationship with them. And I enjoyed that the most. And I think I thrive the most when I am in those kind of circumstances and in those situations.
Why do you think you connected better with people at work than at home?
I think it's the identity thing. So once I am stuck with this distant and cold identity at home, it's too hard to lose it. It becomes almost embarrassing. Oh my God, they're going to say, why is she being so feely touchy right now? Like, that kind of thing. Like, it just becomes hard to break that impression of others that they have created already.
Interesting.
So it's easier for me to warm up to people who don't know me already or who have not heard about me that, oh, she's just cold and distant.
Do I need to go and talk to your family and friends and tell them, hey, Amber is way more touchy-feely than you realize?
So why I call it weird, because I still feel that, I can, even at the times when I really feel something extremely deeply and I'm extremely deeply touched by somebody's story, or I feel extremely empathic towards them. And maybe that's not how they've experienced me, but I sometimes feel that I can come off as cold and, I can come off as, and I can be in the sense that I'm very protective of my solitude, of my me time. I would take that selfishly at all costs, really. And so there's a part of me that's cold, but there's also a part of me that's not so cold. Let's just say that.
Now, when you completed the guest questionnaire before today's podcast, there's a big long list of identities and you ticked 6 of them. What were they?
So a female, I'm an ethnic minority, racial minority, cultural minority, linguistic minority, and religious minority.
Okay, that's quite the list.
Yeah.
Now, tell us where you're joining us from today.
Currently, I'm in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But I was born and raised in Pakistan.
Okay. And when did you come to the US?
In 2011. It's been about 11 and a half years. In July, it'll be 12 years.
Okay, so that'll explain all of those ethnic, cultural, linguistic, religious minorities. All right, so we actually did talk about this off air because we're both living in the US and we both come from different countries, and the natural one that came up for us is that we very clearly have different accents to others around us. So tell me how language plays out for you as someone living in a different country to where they were born.
So I think that it has phases too, especially, when English is not your first language. Having a different accent is one thing, like you can be a British and have a different accent, but not having English at all as your first language, you tend to translate what you think in your primary language, and then you tend to translate it in English. Now, as the time goes by, that gets better, but I still feel sometimes stuck looking for a word exactly that I'm looking for, and it may take me a while before I can come up, and I may not be 100% satisfied with what I came up with. And it does not happen too much, but it does happen every now and then that, you may repeat yourself 6 times, and this problem has gotten way worse with the masks that we wear.
Yeah.
And especially when you are in a COVID room where you have an N95 and a face shield on you, and the other person is hard of hearing. They could, and I mean, you repeat yourself like 6 times and they don't get it.
Yeah.
And at that point, they are feeling embarrassed and you are feeling embarrassed, like whose fault it is that you can't get it.
So did you speak English when you moved to the US?
So we've always liked the medium of instruction in our education system. I went to a private education system, so it was English. And in the med school, it is English through and through, private or not private. So English was not really totally foreign to me. Like I did not have to learn it from a scratch. But as far as the spoken English goes, pretty much. Like I would say that I wasn't really used to speaking English fluently with anyone.
When I learned sign language, I know that when I'm speaking in sign language, I am also translating English into the sign language words. And if I don't know a certain word, I'll go searching for a different sign.
Yeah.
And I always feel like I'm less articulate and I can't share what I want to share. I can't share my intelligence. I can't help others as much as I would like to. Do you find that same thing when you're translating from your native language into English?
Yes. And like I said, as the time goes by and you become more comfortable with the language, it becomes less of a problem. But yes, there are times when you do feel that you may be perceived less intelligent than you are, or not really quite well understood like you want to be.
If you had any advice for someone that was working with someone that had just moved into a country, is there anything that we can do to make things easier for you?
I think saying it out loud might help. Like let's say it's the 4th time that you don't get each other, and if somebody can just say it, I think that eases things a little bit. That okay, like it's the accent, and I understand, and but can you help me? Can you come up with another word or something like that?
Yeah.
So I think just compassionately, just saying it out loud that it's nobody's fault, and we both know what the problem is or what the issue is, but just giving it words, I think, would ease it up a little bit.
Okay, good stuff. All right. So when you moved to the US, what did you find culturally different?
A lot of things. And I think as you continue to live in a country, you understand the culture a little bit deeper. And so you go on to understand a lot of things. I think religion, being a religious minority, may be the most difficult thing. It's hard to help people understand why you can't do certain things, why you can't eat certain stuff. And a lot of people are respectful of that. Some people are not. Why do you observe these days? Why do you fast? And things like that. And being seen as your religion being judged as really cruel because it makes you fast or something like that. Like I understand where it's foreign to them, and so I really try to show my enthusiasm for it, or that I don't really take it as a punishment, or I don't really take it as something that's really being done to me cruelly. Like people do intermittent fasting willfully, and they feel so good about it, and so do I feel good about it. And so like as the time, and you do know that people do take it that way, so you start explaining yourself. But I think that being a religious minority may be the difficult thing, and then raising a kid here, and you want to cultivate your religious values into the child. How do you do that in such a way that they don't blurt out things that are hurtful to somebody else in school and stuff? So that's, I think, the hardest part for me.
When you're living in a country that you mentioned about the holidays, right? The days of celebration and worship. So if you're in a country where they subscribe to the Christian holiday calendar, how does that impact you if your days aren't the same?
So I think the way it has been for us is that we don't celebrate either, actually, in the way that it's typically celebrated, like, the countries of our countries of origin, because there is no holiday, and a lot of times there is no community. And, the holidays are about community. So you end up, like if you're going to work, you go to work. I sometimes even like not so we have like two big holidays in our culture. And so one of them comes after the month of fasting. And that's because, you're fasting, you're aware of that. The other one comes on like almost suddenly. I mean, there is a pre-decided date, and, like everybody knows about it, but we don't go by the lunar calendar, like, in the regular day-to-day life. And so therefore, it has happened that, somebody has asked me, are you celebrating Eid tomorrow or day after tomorrow? And I'm like, is it Eid or tomorrow or day after tomorrow? It's pretty, I mean, when people ask me, oh, how is your Eid going? And I'm like, pretty much like an everyday.
Yeah.
So, that's how, like the best thing you can do is like make a phone call back home, like talk to your siblings and my parents and all that. And, that's really it.
Is it the Muslim religion or the faith that you follow? Okay. So during that fasting period, in daylight hours, how does that impact you at work?
Oh, it's hard. It's hard. And my husband ended up actually not fasting at all because it is too hard for him. I do fast, but I think the hardest thing is to not being able to have caffeine while you're working. So I found these slow release caffeine capsules.
I was going to say, take caffeine tablets. It'll solve everything.
I did actually for the last 3 years. I have been using them, and oh my god, like it's night and day. Like I can take them, and I'm pretty much I'm good. Now,
Yep.
like I joke that the only thing that I miss is like around 4 or so, like I have a snack which is not for hunger and it's just to kill boredom, or like, I just want a break from sitting on my desk.
Yeah.
So that's, like I don't know what to do at that time. Other than that, I'm good.
The workarounds and crutches we put in to function in today's society. Now, with fasting, what can your colleagues do to help ease the, let's call it torture, but ease the difficulty of fasting?
I think we both can do some. So, I think partly it is our responsibility to almost announce that, we are fasting.
Yeah.
Because many a time they don't know that we're fasting. So I think a lot of times, it comes up as, okay, let's go have lunch, or would offer you something that they are eating. They want to share it. And you end up repeating many times like, oh, I can't, I'm fasting. I can't, I'm fasting. So I think, again, like putting it out there that I am fasting. And so we all have an understanding of that. In my country of origin, it's considered respectful that if a person is fasting and you're not, you won't eat in front of them. I don't expect that to happen here. And I mean, it's childish to really expect that. It really is my preference that I fasted, and I mature enough that I can like hold my temptation back even if I see somebody eating it. That's really something more for like, when the kids that they are 7, 8, 9, they start to fast. I think that's a bigger problem for them.
I think I've often made sure that if we're running training in an enclosed training space, that we don't bring the food into the room, and that we leave food outside of the room. Have there only been times when you've been here in the US where you have felt disrespected?
I mean, fortunately, I've been really, really fortunate in that area. Not very much. For the first 6 years, we are in New York, which is a very diverse city. And so that was easy. And ever since that we are here, I think the 95% of population is Caucasian. And there have been one instance in the last 5 to 6 years where a person talked to me like in a very belittling way. So it was an Uber driver. And as we entered into our neighborhood, she was like, oh, you live in a nice neighborhood. And then she made it a point to rub it in my face that, like how you guys come from a third world country, and how I can't even imagine of being that. I mean, like that's the only time where I felt like that somebody on purpose did that. Like people sometimes can act in a little insensitive ways, but you can tell. I haven't really felt disrespected other than that, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think that there's been any barriers to opportunity, promotion, or any of that from being a minority within the US?
There are, and I think it has more to do not necessarily with being a cultural minority or a religious minority or that, or maybe there are factors in that too. But I think it's different for us because we grew up, and I say we, my husband and I, we grew up in Pakistan and we went to med school in Pakistan, and things are a whole lot different when you go to a med school, an international med school, as opposed to American med school. There are definite differences in opportunities, especially getting into residency. There are programs that are sort of like, that, okay, these are the programs that are open to IMGs. And so and it takes a lot of, money to apply to all these programs. So, we end up applying to the programs that we know that they accept IMGs. And they are pretty much the programs that AMGs refuse to go to because they're bad working conditions, whatnot. After you're done residency, again, the competitive fields to get into fellowships is really, really hard if you're not from a med school that is from America. So it makes it hard, yeah.
So the pathway, then you have to make some sacrifices and compromises on the residency at first, and then you have barriers to the next stage of your career because of where you did your residency?
Yes. Yeah. Because of where you did your residency, and because where you did your med school, and because you have some visa requirements, and all of that plays into it. And at some point, I think it also, to a degree, I think, yes, your skin color and all that also plays into it, even if you even out everything else.
Does it then say, let's say you had a particular passion for dermatology. Let's pick a specialization. Does it become more difficult to pursue your specialization based on your passion because of those barriers?
It can. It depends on what do I have passion for. So if I have passion for a field, like I have passion for nephrology. Now, nephrology is not competitive at all. Right. So I can really choose to go into nephrology any day I want. But that's really fortunate for me. Yeah. But if I have a passion for, let's say, dermatology or cardiology, they are very competitive fields. And I'm not going to say that it's impossible to get into it, but the amount of work and the kind of things that you have to do to become equal to a very average American graduate is really, really enormous.
Yeah.
Like you really have to be willing to pretty much, give up the rest of your life to have to be able to do that.
Yeah, okay.
There are instances where people have been able to get there. It's not impossible, but it's really, really hard, much harder than an American medical graduate.
What sort of support do you think and we'll call it an immigrant doctor into the US, what kind of supports do you think would benefit them to thrive at work and in their career?
The thing that hurts the most in all this process, and it hurts many people, like even in America, I would say, is not being valued for the things that you can bring in, your experience. And, like my scores were at 99th percentile. In my third year in my in-service, I was at 99th percentile. So I was in top 1% of doctors' knowledge base wise. And I'm amazing at what I do. But there is absolutely no consideration for that in the application process.
So what is it they're just particularly looking for?
So I don't know what they're looking for. So one of the big things, because there are a huge volume of applications that come in. So programs have to have a way to cut down the applications that they have to review. So almost every program has some filters on. So, the big programs, the ones associated with big universities and Ivy League universities and stuff like that, they have very clear that, they won't take anybody who has graduated more than, 2 years, 3 years. It used to be 5 years when I was applying. It's coming down. Then there are things like we won't take any international medical graduate whatsoever. So all the applications that say that their med school is not American are out automatically. I don't know what else is there. I think there are grading cutoffs too. Like if somebody has less than this much, then we're not going to entertain.
What value do you think your diversity brings to your practice in medicine?
It brings understanding. It brings, because people are different, not just in the ways that we can enlist, and not in the identities that you list. Like there are, I don't know, 52 or something like that.
Yeah.
People are different in a million ways. We are all different. So I think this acceptance of being different and your willingness to value somebody's difference is is the value that a person from a diverse background can bring in.
How do you think that benefits health outcomes?
People feel understood. I think that's the biggest thing. You can be the best of the physician, and if your patient does not feel understood by you, they're not going to follow. And if they are going to follow, they're not going to have the benefit, because their body has decided that they don't want to benefit.
Yeah.
So I think that is the biggest thing, feeling understood by someone.
How do you know in a workplace when you feel safe? Like, what is it that makes you feel either physically safe or psychologically safe to be yourself and to share who you are?
I guess like it again, like the process of trust, it builds little by little. You expose yourself a little bit and you see what acceptance do you get. And as you get more acceptance, then you expose yourself a little bit more. And the more you can do that and you can be accepted without any backlash, that's when you know that it's safe. But I don't think there is a way to know without being vulnerable a little bit before. So it is like any trust process, that you share yourself a little bit and see how it goes.
So if I was in that workplace or in that space with you, is there anything that you'd hope to see from me to know that it would be safe to be vulnerable?
That's a good question. The thing that comes to my mind right now is that when you see people who are being their whole selves, that you can, and I think that brings me to how big it is and how apparently things can be really good on the outside and yet not really safe when you don't see people talking their minds out in the meetings, when people keep on repeating the same tried and tested things over and over again and are really scared to bring out any new ideas. That's when you know that this place is not safe for exposing your whole self.
Okay, so we'll flip that. So the advice would be
Advice would be to be your whole self first, to be vulnerable yourself and show those parts that are not necessarily, the cookie cutter, the expectation that everybody has from a physician, and you expose them and you let them be seen. If you are in a leadership position or wherever you are, to let the other people know that it's okay to be your whole self.
When it comes to representation, do you see yourself, whatever it is, however you see yourself, do you see yourself represented across the medical profession?
Interestingly, in my department, I see a lot of myself. Like I see a lot of those identities that I mentioned, at least in the middle management, quite a bit.
Yeah.
The issue that I have is that it's very, that I feel that, on the top management, they're still the very same people that are everywhere. And so it's, like, ever heard of those things, like, that women get into positions of power and then they serve the same patriarchy.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing, that, you have all those faces there, but you see that there is no tolerance for being yourself because nobody is being themselves.
So how do you think that impacts you and others like you?
I think it impacts everyone, like me or not like me.
So if it was my job to come into, say, your hospital and create a way for people to share their opinions and have their voice heard, what do you reckon the right way to do that would be?
We keep on saying things again, like the culture needs to improve. Like, what is really culture? It's a very high inference kind of word. Like, what do you do about that? It has to start with opening up a conversation, where you can give everybody a chance to speak and ask them what is it that they want to do. And a lot of times, the lack of self-awareness. People don't know that what is it that they're struggling. That you would hear the complaints, the workload is too much, I'm too busy, the hours are too much. And I think that deeper down, it really is this desire to be our whole self and to bring in that we can bring in. And the people that I work with, my residents, my students, I always tell them to bring the part that they love the most, that they feel the most lovable with, to workplace. Do not leave it at home.
Mm.
So bring it with you and find a way to cultivate that when you see your patients, when you interact with your colleagues.
With your passion being physician wellbeing, what do you think some of the important things are that physicians can do to look after their wellbeing?
One of the things that I have done, and it has improved my well-being, is reflective practices. Get curious about yourself and question everything, instead of just going with the assumptions that, it sucks because it sucks for everyone, and because it's too busy, and because nobody respects us, blah, blah, blah. And community is the other thing, like having people that you can share your inner processes with, to have that ability to really say out loud what you think would be really scary to say out loud. I think if we can have those two things to start with, that's a great starting point.
I think while our conversation today has centered around the medical profession, I think things that you've shared will be a very common experience for a lot of people that have immigrated to different countries. So I'm really grateful for what you've shared today. There are two really big key points that I want to revisit and highlight, because I'm going to take them on as learnings from today's session. When you talk about reflective practice, and I like to think I do that a lot, but I really love the term detective of your own mind, because it's not just about reflecting, but it's about analyzing and looking at the what and the why and what you could do differently to do things better. So I really love detective of your own mind. That's definitely taking that away. And the other one is about bringing your joy to work, right? Don't leave it at home. Yeah. Whatever it is you find joy in, bring it to work with you, which then amplifies your authentic self at work. And it means you're creating space, whether it's in this case with your patients, but with your colleagues, your customers, the people you work with, to also feel like that they can be joyous and their authentic selves at work. Are there any key last points or things you'd like to share with people on how they can best create a space or an environment for people like you to thrive in life and work?
I think we all of us as a society need to embrace people for who they are, for their uniqueness. It's not just limited to the identities that we list and just the minorities. It really pretty much goes for everyone. We all want to be seen as the unique people that we are.
Dr. Amber, you have shared some great stuff today, and I'm really grateful for you sharing some vulnerabilities and being courageous in that. So it has been a joy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a joy.